Good Friday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for Friday. Today is July the 1st. We made it through half of the first half of 2022, and now we're beginning into the second half of 2022 with a daily Bible reading today from Daniel chapter 11 and also 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Daniel 11 and 1 Corinthians chapter 10 are up for today. Let's get the text on the screen, and we will get to reading. Now, to understand exactly what's going on here, of course, we need to see what's in the previous text. So we see here in verse number 1, again, I think probably not the best chapter break, but nonetheless, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to strengthen him. Now I will tell you the truth. We have to figure out, well, who is the I and who is the you? To me, it seems as if this goes all the way back here to who let's see here, who Daniel's speaking with, all the way back to chapter 10. We have this individual who is who Daniel sees. This I right here, I looked up, is going back to Daniel, because here in those days, Daniel, was mourning for 3 full weeks. He did these things. Then he sees another individual, this angelic being. So only Daniel, saw the vision. But then we see somebody else begin to speak. Don't be afraid, Daniel said to me. So while he's speaking to me, while the angel is speaking to Daniel, the angelic being is speaking to Daniel. Let's see here. He said, do you know why I've come to you? So now the I has now switched to the angelic being. I must return at once to fight against the prince of Persia. When I leave, the prince of Greece will come. However, I will tell you what is recorded in the book of truth. No one has the courage to support me against those princes except Michael, your prince. In the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to strengthen and protect him. Now I will tell you the truth. Who seems to be speaking here is not Daniel himself, but this angelic being. So with that being the case, I do believe we'll get into the text. And what I want to note on this text is this is, again, incredible detail about what is going to happen in the future. This is the prophecy of this angelic being, of what's going to take place in the future concerning the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks, and a number of other individuals. It's going to take us all the way almost up to New Testament times. And again, what we need to recognize about this text is this is a very hotly contested text, because if this text was written when it is believed to have been written, well, when it claims to have been written, then that would show the ability of predictive prophecy, which predictive prophecy, especially with this amount of detail, if I said something like, somebody, football season coming up in the fall, a team from the SEC, from the Southeastern Conference, is going to win the national championship. Well, whenever that happens, if that happens, probably will happen, it's kind of the deal at this point, then I could say, oh, look at me, I'm a prophet. Well, okay, yeah, we've got like a 1 in however many conferences there are, 1 in 5, 1 in 6, 1 in 7 chance of that. But what if I said, okay, well, it's going to be this specific team? Well, that's right. Then, okay, that's pretty impressive. Now, what if I said it's going to be this specific team beating this other specific team? Then your eyes begin to perk, or then your ears begin to perk up. You're like, huh, this is very interesting. And then I said they're going to beat them by this specific score to this specific score. And I get down to very minute details. Eventually, you're going to think, okay, yeah, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. That is a straight up predictive prophecy. Well, that's kind of the idea we have here. It's not that this angelic being is just saying in the future there's going to be some kings rise, some kings fall, some nations rise, some nations fall. No, it's very specific in nature. And I think that is an evidence to the divinity of this prophecy, that there is supernatural power behind what is being discussed here. I found another article that is pretty cool, and I thought about it after our last time I mentioned an article to you, that I don't know why I didn't just put a link to this article in the description, either on Facebook or YouTube. I'm going to do that this time. I'm going to go back for the last one, and I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to link either here in the YouTube description or on the Facebook description. I will copy and paste that link into those places, so that if you would like to go and read a little further on this, you can. anything in the future that I find interesting that I like to share, I'll do that as well. I don't know why I didn't think of that to begin with, at least I thought of it now. So you can check after we get done with this reading. I will drop that in the description on both Facebook and YouTube. All right, with that being said, let us see what the angelic being says is going to happen in the future, beginning in Daniel chapter 2, or excuse me, Daniel chapter 11 and verse number 2. Daniel chapter 11, verse number 2, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the fourth will be far richer than the others. By the power he gains through his riches, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. Then a warrior king will arise. He will rule a vast realm and do whatever he wants. But as soon as he is established, his kingdom will be broken up and divided to the four winds of heaven, but not to his descendants. It will not be the same kingdom that he ruled, because his kingdom will be uprooted and will go to others besides him. The king of the south will grow powerful, but one of his commanders will grow more powerful and will rule a kingdom greater than his. After some years, they will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to seal the agreement. She will not retain power, and his strength will not endure. She will be given up together with her entourage, her father, and the one who supported her during those times. In the place of the king of the south, one from her family will rise up, come against the army, and enter the fortress of the king of the north. He will take action against them and triumph. He will take even their gods captive to Egypt with their metal images and their precious articles of silver and gold. For some years, he will stay away from the king of the north, who will enter the kingdom of the king of the south and then return to his own lands. His sons will mobilize for war and assemble a large number of armed forces. They will advance, sweeping through like a flood, and will again wage war as far as his fortress. Infuriated, the king of the south will march out to fight with the king of the north, who will raise a large army, but they will be handed over to his enemy. When the army is carried off, he will become arrogant and cause tens of thousands to fall, but he will not triumph. The king of the north will again raise a multitude larger than the first. After some years, he will advance with a great army and many supplies. In those times, many will rise up against the king of the south. Violent ones among your own people will assert themselves to fulfill a vision, but they will fail. Then the king of the north will come, build up a siege ramp, and capture a well-fortified city. The forces of the south will not stand. Even their select troops will not be able to resist. The king of the north who comes against him will do whatever he wants, and no one can oppose him. He will establish himself in the beautiful land with total destruction in his hand. He will resolve to come with the force of his whole kingdom and will reach an agreement with him. He will give him a daughter in marriage to destroy it, but she will not stand with him or support him. Then he will turn his attention to the coasts and islands and capture many, but a commander will put an end to his taunting. Instead, he will turn his taunts against him. He will turn his attention back to the fortresses of his own land, but he will stumble, fall, and be no more. In his place, one will arise who will send out a tax collector for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days, he will be broken, though not in anger or in battle. In his place, a despised person will arise. Royal honors will not be given to him, but he will come during a time of peace and siege the kingdom by intrigue. A flood of forces will be swept away before him. They will be broken, as well as the covenant prince. After an alliance is made with him, he will act deceitfully. He will rise to power with a small nation. During a time of peace, he will come into the richest parts of the province and do what his fathers and predecessors never did. He will lavish, plunder, loot, and wealth on his He will lavish, plunder, loot, and wealth on his followers, and he will make his plans against fortified cities, but only for a time. With a large army, he will stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south, and the king of the south will prepare for battle with an extremely large and powerful army, but he will not succeed because plots will be made against him. Those who eat his provisions will destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall slain. The two kings whose hearts are bent on evil will speak lies at the same table, but to no avail, for still the end will come, at the appointed time. The king of the north will return to his land with great wealth, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant. He will take action, then return to his own land. At the appointed time, he will come again to the south, but this time will not be like the first. Ships of Kittim will come against him, and being intimidated, he will withdraw. Then he will rage against the holy covenant and take action. On his return, he will favor those who abandon the holy covenants. His forces will rise up and desecrate the temple fortress. They will abolish the regular sacrifice and set up the abomination of desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who acted wickedly against the covenant. But the people who know their God will be strong and take action. Those who have insight among the people will give understanding to many, yet they will fall by the sword and flame, and be captured and plundered for a time. When they fall, they will be helped by some, but many others will join them insincerely. Some of those who have insight will fall, so that they may be refined, purified, and cleansed until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time. Then the king will do whatever he wants. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god. He will say outrageous things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is complete, because what has been decreed will be accomplished, and he will not show regard for the gods of his fathers, the God desired by women, or any other god, because he will magnify himself above all. Instead, he will honor a God of fortresses, a God his fathers did not know, with gold, silver, precious stones, and riches. He will deal with the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will greatly honor those who acknowledge him, making them rulers over many and disturbing land as a reward. At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle, but the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, horsemen, and many ships. He will invade countries and sweep through like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land, and many will fall, but these will escape from his power: Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of the Ammonites. He will extend his power against the countries, and not even the land of Egypt will escape. He will get control over the hidden treasures of gold and silver, over all of the riches of Egypt. The Libyans and Cushites will also be in submission, but reports from the east and the north will terrify him, and he will go out with great fury to annihilate and completely destroy many. He will pitch his royal tents between the sea and the beautiful holy mountain, but he will meet his ends with no one to help him. Daniel chapter 11. Just a couple of observations here, something that we have seen time and time again, that the people who know the Lord will be strong, take action, that during all these times of turbulence, the rising and fall of kingdoms and kings, those who know God are those who will be able to have peace in time of great turmoil. But another thing I want to note is just the reality that this is the rise and fall of kings, that there is a king, that kings and kingdoms are coming and going constantly. Some are on the rise, some are on the fall, some are doing the conquering, some are being conquered. Yet this needs to contrast with what we see in Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7, that there is coming an eternal kingdom that will never fall, that once it rises to power, once it rises to prominence, once it comes to power, that will never be taken away from it. So let's take that to heart. Again, if you're interested in more of the specifics of what is being talked about here, I will link that article in the description, and you can go look at that. But I just want us to take away with this cursory reading, this understanding that men continue to come and go, but God and those who trust in him, they will continue to remain, even if they might get caught up in the distress, even if they might get caught up in the chaos. God still protects them, and God is still with them, and in the end, they will stand victorious with him in his kingdom. Daniel chapter 11. Alrighty, flipping over now to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, continuing to look at this section that is going to be defined by this idea of needing to love others and love God. Let's see how that is discussed here within this text. Now, do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, this is 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 1, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses and in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them, since they were struck down in the wilderness. Now these things took place as an example for us, so that we will not desire evil things as they did. Don't become idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, got up to party. Let us not commit sexual immorality, as some of them did. In a single day, 23,000 people died. Let us not test Christ, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the snakes. And don't complain, as some of them did, and were killed by the destroyer. These things happened to them as examples, and they were written for our instruction, on whom the ends of the ages have come. So whoever thinks he stands must be careful not to fall. No temptation has come upon you except what is common to humanity, but God is faithful, and he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation he will also provide a way out, so that you may be able to bear it. So then, my dear friends, flee from idolatry. I'm speaking as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I'm saying. The cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a sharing in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a sharing in the body of Christ? Because there is one bread, we who are many are one body, since all of us share the one bread. Consider the people of Israel. Do not those who eat the sacrifices participate in the altar? What am I saying then? That food sacrificed to idols is anything? Or that the idol is anything? No, but I do say that what they sacrifice to demons and not to God. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot share in the Lord's table and the table of demons. Or are we provoking the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything builds up. No one is to seek his own good, but the good of the other person. Eat everything that is sold in the meat market without raising questions for the sake of conscience, since the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it. If any of the unbelievers invite you over and you want to go, verse 27, if any of the unbelievers invites you over and you want to go, eat everything that is set before you without raising questions for the sake of conscience. But if someone says to you, this is food from a sacrifice, do not eat it, out of the consideration for the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I do not mean your own conscience, but the other person's. For why is my freedom judged by another's conscience? If I partake with thanksgiving, why am I criticized because of something for which I give thanks? So whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or Greeks or the church of God, just as I also try to please everyone in everything, not seeking my own benefit, but the benefit of many, so that they may be saved. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. This is the conclusion again of the section in chapters 8 through 9, and 10, 8 through 10, which focuses on these issues concerning the foods, the meat sacrificed to idols. We see the very beginning of chapter 8. We see the very end here in chapter 10, and everything in between kind of revolves around this idea. And I think the main foundation of it is we need to love others. We need to love others. And I think that this particular verse here, verse 24, sums that up. No one is to seek his own good, but the good of the other person. We need to love them so much that we're willing to sacrifice this freedom that we have in order to do what is well for them. Again, Paul says here, we're not doing this for our conscience sake, but for the sake of the other person's conscience. But at the same time, there's two sides of this coin, isn't there? That we should give up our freedom for the help of others, but if we don't see there being an issue, and as Paul says, if I give thanks for what I have, I shouldn't be judged for this freedom that I'm participating in. So it's a really hard line to balance. If I'm being honest with you, it's hard to balance the two, because you have these two sides. As the strong person who understands the reality of the situation, we should humble ourselves to help others. At the same time, those who might be weak in the situation, if we do exercise our freedom, we shouldn't be judged for that. But really, again, it all comes down to loving one another, because there will be times where even though I have a freedom to do something, I might give that up for someone else. But the other times where I might be the weaker person, I might see somebody doing something I don't particularly like or might bother me, but I'm going to allow them to do that because that's their freedom to do so. Again, it all comes down to love. It all comes down to humility. not making my way the way that things have to be done, but being willing to submit myself to others for their benefit. So think about that again. That I think that's the whole issue here in chapters 8, 9, and 10 is this having this attitude of love and service and humility. Let's have that be a defining portion of our character, because I'm really convinced that if we are willing to have those characteristics about ourselves, and if we're willing to put them to practice in the way that we deal with others, then almost every situation, if not every situation, can be worked out, and a situation can be resolved whenever everyone is willing to love, willing to humble themselves, and willing to submit to others for their good and for the sake of unity and peace. Thanks so much for tuning into this reading. I hope that you'll join in again tomorrow as we conclude Daniel. We'll be in Daniel chapter 12 tomorrow, and we'll also read together here in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Daniel 12 and 1 Corinthians 11 on the schedule for tomorrow. Looking forward to reading that with you then. Take care.